Hello. This is a reading for Aquarius, and I'm hoping that it's finding you doing well. I'm still sticking with just the tarot and the I Ching for this reading today, using the Aleister Crowley, I almost said Rider-Waite, Aleister Crowley Thoth deck, or Thoth deck, however you want to say it. I've also already cast a hexagram for you from the I Ching using the coin toss method. And it's kind of interesting, the message that's coming through with the hexagram. So I'm going to read a little bit from Benabel Wen's I Ching, the Oracle book. Highly recommend if you don't already own a copy. But the hexagram you've got today is hexagram number 21. And 21 is composed of the two trigrams we have right down here. This is thunder, and up here, this is fire. The Chinese elements associated with these two are obviously fire for fire, but the Chinese element of wood for thunder. And we'll be getting into this a little bit as I read more from the oracle down here. But immediately, like looking at the elemental correspondences, wood underneath the fire, it's like providing something or giving like fuel to some form of purification process, or even an entreaty of some kind. One of the things that comes up as you're reading about this hexagram is like providing an offering or a sacrifice. It's interesting to me that you also have your changing line as the sixth line, which is this top line here. So if you look over to the transformed hexagram that this becomes, it's thunder over thunder. I think it's 51, hexagram 51, I could be wrong. But when you have the two trigrams both being composed of thunder, it's kind of telling you to definitely entreat the gods, to give offerings to your ancestors, to burn incense or offer food and prayer to whatever higher power or higher idea of divinity that you have in order to assist you with your goals. And one of the images that I was getting, contemplating this, is obviously thinking about thunder being like a channel between the earth and the heaven. It's kind of like a conduit through which this marriage, this intermingling, this mixing of energies takes place, this exchange of the energetic charge of the heavens with the more receptive, kind of still vessel quality of the earth's energy, and allowing that exchange to happen, like charging up the earth system or discharging, because I believe it's like a two-way communication. But thinking about even like the Vedic practices of offering sacrifices or giving offerings to the fire, to Agni, which is like the consciousness, the presence attributed to the element of fire, this fire that can take many different forms, but in the Vedic fire, it's a place to provide. You dump your food, or you dump your old fabrics, your fine silks, your milk, yogurt, herbs, spices, incense, whatever, and it gets reduced to a more subtle form by the fire, and is able to kind of reach the heavens in that way, because it starts off as like gross physical matter, kind of like the wood element of the thunder trigram. And through the alchemical process of the fire is allowed to be released as, if you want to call them vapors, whatever way helps you to kind of conceptually understand that exchange, that transformation from gross to subtle, I think is relevant to this hexagram. And this hexagram is called Bite Through in this book. I'm just going to go ahead and read it, and I'll expand as we're going through because there's a lot to cover. Okay. So the oracle for hexagram 21 says, "A vulnerable position, outranked and overpowered. Circumstances are favorable for issuing punishment where punishment is due. Adjudicate with impartiality, and then let the punishment fit the crime. Yet in the process of penalizing another, you inflict harm onto yourself," which I think is somewhat connected to, the fact that fire consumes the wood, and the wood is kind of like the base of the situation. The more relevant immediate circumstances, maybe even where you stand in the midst of the situation that's kind of taking place around you, unfolding around you, because I feel like the upper trigram is more concerned with the realm of like fate and happenstance, things that are kind of outside of your immediate control, and the bottom trigram is more like where you find yourself situated. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but it's just an easier way for me to kind of connect with the energy of each hexagram. Okay, so a difficult choice, a Pyrrhic victory. Pyrrhic being Pyrrhic. Goodness gracious, you'd think I could spell. Pyrrhic victory, I think of that as like we're all burned in the process. Like there's a mutual violence or a mutual affliction through the process of attaining victory in the situation. Like it's not like one person comes out unscathed. It's everything burns. And that's kind of the image that I get reading that. If you cannot be settled until the law has been invoked, then invoke the law. Remember that there are many codes of law in this universe. Administer justice, sign of the sacrifice. There are many codes of law in this universe. We'll get into how it talks about entreating the divine a little bit, and especially with the transformed hexagram, like I was saying, because I feel like that's where the energy is kind of compelling you towards. There's law on our plane, like the human plane, the ideas that we have of what morality is, what justice is, and then there's, the divine, more subtle planes. There's a higher law than ours. And I feel like if you connect with that plane or that state of being, and you entreaty it to kind of interact with your reality and help you to shape it in a way that's more conducive for your purposes, you'll find that things flow maybe more easily, more readily than what you can do on the ground alone, if that makes sense, rather than going by the book, in the physical world, which obviously definitely do that because it might, be conducive, but remember that there are higher judges than what we have provided for ourselves in this world. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Cracking seeds with the front teeth, because the image is similar to hexagram 27, which is composed of 2 yang lines, top and bottom, and then all yin lines in the middle. So it's like 2 lips and the teeth, which maybe look at that hexagram. I don't know if it's particularly relevant here, but just a nice little crossover. Cracking seeds with the front teeth, so the seed being that yang line that's kind of intruding in the middle right there. Having the clarity to incite movement, fire over thunder. There is an obstruction between the upper lip and the lower, that yang line right there, forcing your mouth open, a vulnerable position. Bite down and tear through the obstruction to close the mouth again. This is the image of an open mouth with an obstruction between the lips. The answer is to bite through the obstruction. To protect from harm and to lead the way, to open the path for others, the king implements imperial orders for the law and punishment of crimes, auspicious to proceed, favorable outcome for the trial. Shi means to bite down, to gnaw through, though etymologically it originates from the word shi, meaning divination with yarrow stalks, or to divine. In Chinese folk beliefs, homonyms hold power. Moreover, the word wu for shaman, witch, or medium is embedded into shi. Thus, to the mystic, hexagram 21 can have the implication of seeking retributive justice through witchcraft, which is something kind of connected also with the trigram of thunder. There's this association with magicians or spell workers with the trigram of thunder, because of I think it has something to do with the thunder god that's associated with it. But there's this, again, this idea of the channel between the heaven and the earth, and allowing that the more subtle energies to manifest in the more gross reality. So again, hanging with that theme, whether it's like you actually praying to the divine to enact changes in the way that you see fit, or it's you working magic, like if that's something that you kind of dabble with, like having some sort of ritualistic method of connecting with the higher reality in order to enact physical change, or to open the way for it, rather, because thunder, it has that yang line at the bottom with the two yin lines, kind of providing space for the energy to rise up and to bridge the heaven with the earth. Okay. Ke, in addition to the image of cracking seeds between the teeth, also means to be talkative or to reproach, to be contentious and litigious, inclined to bicker, dispute, and be disagreeable. Hexagram 21 pertains to legal and governmental matters. The circumstances are favorable for you right now, and it is to your advantage to inflict punishment where punishment is due. Bite down, remove obstacles with force. One of the, I don't know if this is going to be entirely relevant for everybody, but one of the ways that this hexagram is showing up for me as I'm reading this, there's been a few situations in my life that have been pretty upsetting, and the approach that I had was to commune with the divine in a way, and being kind of blatantly angry about the situation and just allowing that to kind of propel my communication attempts with the divine. Not necessarily chastising the divine, but definitely being like very candid about the situation, I feel like was the most effective way to get my point across and to try to find the more clear understanding of the situation, because in communicating with the divine, there's like your message is received and you get a response, and it's not necessarily, it can be, it's not necessarily in like spoken word, but there's like impression that you get, and by speaking your mind, I feel like it empties you of these conceptions, these notions, these biases, these assumptions that you have about what the situation is, and it makes space for the truth to impress itself upon you. At least that's been my experience. So maybe something for you to think about in that sort of in whatever situation you find yourself in. I'm going to read from the 6th line now. Obviously I implore you to go ahead and do your own research on this hexagram and go through it line by line, because it's going to offer you a bit more depth and nuance to the interpretation. But for sake of time, we're just going to read from the 6th line, because that's your transforming line on this hexagram today. Okay, so the 6th line. Carrying the Kong, Cangue, maims the ear, misfortune. Unintended consequences, setbacks encountered, mistreatment of a matter at hand. One is confined by a Kong, which is kind of like a wooden yoke. The way that my mind understands it is like in the medieval times, you have the people where it's like this harness, it's holding their head in place and it's also holding their arms in place. I think in the Chinese tradition, the way they would use it is like they would write the person's crimes like on the wooden portion of the apparatus, and it would be like a form of humiliation for the person and kind of compel them to never make the same mistake again. One is confined by a Kong around the neck, either as a form of corporeal punishment or as a self-inflicted ritual of penance. The Kong restricts the person's movements and prevents the person from being able to eat. It was intended to be a form of absolution. Generally speaking, people were sentenced to wear a Kong for the purpose of humiliating them, not necessarily hurting them. However, unintended consequences have ensued over the course of the matter at hand, thus the reference to the Kong maiming the ear. Another form of carrying the Kong was self-inflicted in a form of penance ritual. To absolve one of past transgressions, a person subscribing to such folk religious beliefs would voluntarily wear a Kong to release spiritual or karmic consequences of the past transgression. I'm almost wondering if there's like a connection there with what I was saying about like being really candid and expressing your issues, your problems, your understanding of the situation to the divine, and that kind of making space for the truth to kind of trickle in. I feel like there's more to say, but I want to get to the tarot cards now and see if maybe there's confirmation or further exposition on what's already come through. Okay. I already shuffled a little bit off camera, but I'm going to give them a little bit more space to change around. Because I think thus far we've got a pretty good message coming through for you, Aquarius. As I'm shuffling, I'm thinking about dust bunnies for some reason. Like I'm specifically seeing them swirl around in wind currents underneath furniture that hasn't been moved. But there's like sunlight streaming in, and I feel like the sun is impelling the movement of the wind, the movement of the air, which is what's stirring up these dust bunnies. So it's like the light, the clarity, awareness is being brought to situations that haven't been looked at in a while. Maybe remembering things that you haven't thought about in a long time, and it's sort of impelling you to be confronted with a different understanding of your present situation or your present approach to things, maybe. I'm also seeing grains, specifically quinoa. I eat a lot of quinoa, so that's probably just my my bias showing. But it's like connecting with the hexagram, like the grain in between the teeth was the quinoa. Like taking nourishment from an adverse situation. Maybe. Aquarius. I feel like they want to be shuffled a lot, my goodness. Every time I'm like, are we ready? It's like, no. I need more. It's very sparkly today. Like the energy that I'm connecting with, it crackles and pops like electricity. Maybe connected to the thunder trigram. Here we are. Okay. So, first card, we have the Ace of Wands. Speaking of sparkly, crackly, popping energy, this is the cardinal beginning point of the zodiac, that 0-degree point of Aries. And it represents the wellspring of consciousness into material reality. You know, it's all the energy that propels action, which propels manifestation, which propels speech, which propels creation, and ultimately self-realization and understanding. It's also very, like, sparkly. Like, I'm looking at it, and it's like, almost like sticking a fork in a socket. Next card, we have the Empress in reverse, so Venus is showing up. And in a previous reading, I connected with the Empress in reverse as like Venus in the evening star stage, which is, I think, currently what she's manifesting as. I haven't looked at the astrology in a little bit too long. And of course, my little thing has a dead battery. We'll look into that later. But I'm pretty sure I've been seeing Venus after sunset lately, so obviously in the evening star stage. Also in opposition or adverse to her own sign of Taurus. I think she's still transiting through Scorpio, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, we'll get into more subtle interpretations of these as we go. Next card, we have the Ten of Wands in reverse. This is the last decan of Sagittarius, and in this deck it's called Oppression. Saturn-ruled decan. We have the 10 of Swords in reverse. We got another 10. This is the last decan of Gemini. If it'll focus, that would be great. Okay. So ruled by the Sun, that last decan of Gemini. Then we have the Queen of Discs in reverse. Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, Earth energy. Then we have another 10. We have the Fortune, the Wheel of Fortune. This is Jupiter's card. I didn't realize until now, you guys are like super far away today. Gotta adjust the tripod. Prince of Wands, Prince of Fire. So Aries, Leo, Sagittarius coming through. Coming through. I feel, as I was saying that, like I'm seeing, it's connecting for some reason with like the trolley drivers. I don't know what they're called in airports, where they're like driving around people that have a hard time getting around or just want to ride to their terminal. And it kind of helps them because it has space for them to put their luggage. And they usually shout as they're coming up behind you to kind of announce that they're coming through and you need to move and clear a way for them to come through. So that's kind of the impression that I'm getting with this Prince of Wands. And I'm curious about that now. Like announcing your presence, maybe. There was something with this hexagram that was kind of talking about that. Like speaking out and affirming your position, even if it has consequences, because it's your truth. It's who you are, it's where you are, and it's how you are. And if other people aren't going to make space for it and allow you to be that, it's not going to matter, because you're getting where you're going. And if you're in the way, then by all means, have fun getting trampled. Like, that's kind of the sense that I'm getting with this here. And you, speaking of getting trampled, you have Aries showing up, the Emperor. Yeah, kind of like that very self-assured energy. Like, I don't need you to validate who I already know myself to be. And if you're not okay with it, then that's your problem. I'm looking over at those 2 10 cards as I'm saying that. 6 of Cups in reverse, pleasure. That is the middle decan of fixed water, so Scorpio. And then we have Gemini, the lovers. Harmonization, synchronization, meeting, relationship, exchange. Oh, and at the bottom of the deck, we have the 6 of Swords, middle decan of Aquarius. I'll leave that up just so we can maybe reference it if we need to. Okay. Where to begin? Okay, well, I guess first off, the Emperor is kind of coming through, and I'm going to arrange these cards in sort of like an arrow position. It's like the Emperor is like at the heart of the spread, and it's pushing towards this 10 of Wands in reverse. And the way I'm seeing it is kind of like a chessboard where, you have these 2 people sitting opposite each other. They're both looking at this board that's between them. And that's kind of the energy that I'm getting with this 10 of Wands kind of opposing this Emperor down here. And I'm hearing, again, that phrase, mutually assured destruction. Like, this Emperor needs to get to wherever this 10 of Wands, this opposing, repressive force, whatever this is, it's someone or something, some situation that you're kind of being confronted with, and it's like hitting a brick wall. Your ambitions, your desires, there's this idea of obstruction, again, just like the hexagram was saying. You know, when you come to that yang line that's in the middle of what should be an open mouth, and you're having to bite through, you're having to break through this obstacle in order to be able to move forward. I think it's interesting. He's looking over to the Empress over here, the way that the cards are laid out. It's just like this. But she's not looking at him. You know, if... I'm hearing... She may be in his sign, like referring to Mars, referring to Scorpio. If Venus is still transiting through Scorpio, if not, whatever. It's just, this is the way the image is coming through. It's like, she may be in your sign, she may be in your house, but that doesn't mean that she's just going to do whatever you want. And the way that this is coming through, it's sort of like... this is really abstract. Okay. So it's sort of like this emperor is being met with obstruction, and in order to break through, there's like a certain choice phrase or like keywords, like passwords. There's something that needs to be put into words, and the words are being represented here in my head as the Empress, as Venus, this receptacle, this vessel for meaning, this vessel for communication. But she's not being supportive of the emperor's aims. Like maybe this emperor is choosing to say certain things that aren't correct or aren't fully embodying the point of view of the emperor, and they're not allowing one to get through this this firewall, is what I'm hearing. Kind of interesting that there's some like computer lingo sort of breaking through here. Like maybe this emperor, like, obviously take this as you will, I'm going to be working with like really abstract kind of storytelling with this. The emperor is kind of being presented as like a hacker trying to break into this system that has access to information that's vital. Information, I'm hearing like free the information, like allow the information to come out of this container, because it's useless sitting in there because there's only like maybe one or two people that can even access it. And so this emperor is like trying to break into this space where the dust bunnies are, and shine the light on it so that the situation can be seen clearly. And it's like we're trying to go the conventional route of like maybe guessing the correct password, trying to say the right thing, trying to be amiable, you know, trying to be kind, patient. Like instead of like just being like, move out of the way, I'm coming through, it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to be coming through. If you wouldn't mind, please, like making a little space for me. I've got to get through because I have this... I'm hearing like I'm pushing a wheelchair. We're trying to get to the hospital. We're trying to get somewhere important. And like trying to be polite about it, but there's no like receptivity on the other person's part, or like the situation around you just isn't conducive for that approach. Like you're trying to be gentle where you need to be firm, if that makes sense. Like there's a certain degree of not necessarily aggression, but I'm hearing forthrightness. The situation calls for more force than what the Empress represents. You know, there's a time and a space for being amenable, and a time and a space for being gentle, being careful and cautious and respectful. And I don't think that's what this calls for now. This is calling for like a more stark declaration of what the truth is, rather than trying to soften the hard edges of it with, you know, Venus's little glamour, you know, ability to glamour is kind of what's connecting with that. I'm looking over that Ten of Swords, but I don't think it's ready to speak yet, so I'm going to try to come back over here to this left side of the spread and see. Okay, so interesting, we have the Wheel of Fortune underneath this Ace of Wands here. I'm getting like so many abstract images, and I'm trying to like break them down into something that's usable. But what's coming through with this fortune, this Ace of Wands interchange is like a nuclear power plant. Like this place, this source of tremendous output. Tremendous, being that sort of Jupiterian aspect. This, nuclear power is like one of the most efficient forms of energy production that we have access to today, but there's a lot of red tape around it. And I'm wondering, like, if there's like, okay, so there's like a sense of like connecting to a source of energy that isn't acceptable. I don't think acceptable is the right word, but isn't something that people typically go for. And obviously, the nuclear power plant thing is maybe more metaphorical than literal. But that idea of it being like kind of almost taboo is kind of being emphasized to me. Maybe this idea, like kind of what was coming through with the hexagram of like working with witchcraft or connecting with spirit, connecting with your ancestors, connecting with the divine, finding a less conventional source of change, source of energy, which will impart change in your reality, and using that to kind of break through whatever this obstacle is, whatever this firewall. Like rather than trying to key in the password, it's like you step back, you light some incense, you light a candle, and you pray, and then the answer kind of, in doing that, you open the channel for the answer to come through. Kind of like what I was saying of like expelling and expressing your feelings about a situation, and that kind of emptying you and making you a space, a receptacle, a vessel for the truth to pour in. As I was tossing the coins for your hexagram today, I was actually, obviously connecting with Aquarius, but I was seeing the water bearer like very, very vividly. And that normally doesn't happen when I'm connecting with your readings, Aquarius. But it was like every time that I felt like it was ready for me to, toss the coins, because I would sit there and shake and like, kind of pray and ask for the message to come through. It was like every time I felt like the coins were ready, I saw the water bearer like pouring the water out. And it was like, this is the truth. This is the knowledge that when you make space for is able to flood your system in a way. And it's like, I feel like this is the message with this Wheel of Fortune, with this Jupiter card, with this Ace of Wands, of like connecting with that, building an ofrenda, putting pictures of your ancestors that have passed on a table and providing them with flowers, burning incense, music that they like, leaving out little plates of food, and that being like a way of plugging in to more subtle states of reality, more subtle energies. And by connecting with that, by forming a channel of exchange with that, you're given access to further ability, further energy, which will inspire more movement. And I'm looking at the Prince of Wands as I'm saying that. Like, this is you once you've connected with that source of energy. And, you're kind of, I'm seeing the Prince of Wands, he's like charging through the situation. And remember what I was saying about the little airport trolley people, like, you're moving. And whether or not people make a way for you or not, you're not hitting the brakes, you're accelerating, and they need to make a way for you or suffer the consequences of being in your way. And it's like the energy is moving in this direction, like from the Wheel of Fortune, connecting with that source, to this Prince of Wands, somebody who's now inspired and full of passion and drive and has the energy to follow through with whatever idea has come into being through this Ace of Wands clarity moment. Moving towards the Emperor. Well, now you're in charge, you're assured of yourself, you know your capability, you know your ability, and you're able to wield your implements, is what I'm hearing, effectively, in a way to break through whatever this Ten of Wands is, this oppressive, firewall. I keep hearing firewall every time I look at it. And it's also being confronted with this Ten of Swords energy right here, which I'm seeing as like encryption, which is kind of odd. Typically you see in the Rider-Waite deck and in some other tarot decks, there's usually a figure lying down with a bunch of swords in his back, and it's kind of like the sense of total obliteration, total loss. I had somebody comment that it kind of reminds them of like if you have a really rough day at work and then you come home, you're finally able to like collapse on the bed and just like black out because you're just so exhausted. But for whatever reason today, it's kind of keeping along the lines of this computer lingo that's coming through of like encryption. And specifically, I'm looking at the sword that's broken, or like breaking, actively breaking in the image of this card. If you can see that in the center. And it's like breaking the encryption, breaking the firewall. And I'm seeing like a bunch of TV static. I'm getting like this sense of like a sword or a plug going into this little box where the dust bunnies are, where this very vital information is that you're trying to hack into, and you've used a different approach because you've kind of withdrawn first, and you've prayed, you've asked your ancestors, you've asked the gods, you've asked the Tao, whatever name you want to give the divine, to help you get through this, because your own methods aren't working. The law on a man-made level isn't working. So you're entreating the higher power because they have the key to access this. I'm seeing like weird fourth dimensional, like dimensions within dimensions, and like folding or like twisting the reality somewhat. Anyway, I don't want to get too far down that image because it's just going to take me down some weird rabbit holes. But like this 10 of Swords, yeah, definitely like I'm seeing like there's like a wall of encryption, like a wall of like strings of like numbers and symbols, and it's like the hash. And it's just like I see these two hands and they're like pulling it apart. And then what's on the inside is like really strange. It's being like shown to me as like a rectangular prism, but like the edges are softened, and it's like pure like bone white and smooth. And like I'm like seeing like the fingers like touching it, and it's like it's almost like marshmallow. I don't know what that means. I don't know if it's like a description of some form of purity, or it's just like it is exactly what it is and no more. Like it is maybe truth or clarity in some way. Interesting. I'm looking over at this Empress again, and I'm seeing her as like being the representative of whatever that rectangular prism marshmallow thing is. And I'm seeing this marking, it looks like a crescent moon with the dark shadowed portion of the moon. That little black dot on the shield between these two birds. And out of the corner of my eye, it was looking like a keyhole. And it was like the reason why she's looking away from this emperor is because she's behind this firewall. She's not in the same space, and you need to get into the tower and rescue her. Like that kind of almost fairy tale sequence of events. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's like whatever is in this space where the dust bunnies are, that's behind this firewall, whatever it is that you're trying to break through into, I feel like it leads to everything that Venus represents, like harmonization, balance, social, I almost said equity, but social, like, I'm hearing acquiescence, like there's no more opposition. There's no more discordant notes being played. Everybody's playing in harmony with one another. Like once you have access to whatever this rectangular prism that's been locked away is, whatever that new understanding of reality, whatever this new paradigm is that you're trying to access, in achieving it, in getting it, in freeing it, in providing it for yourself, maybe providing it to other people, it's creating a softened space, because as I'm saying that, I'm thinking about like the softened edges of this rectangular prism. And it's like, it's the truth, but it doesn't have to be harsh. But there's a harshness that's required in order to get to it. It's like, but once you have it, it's like all pillows and marshmallows. Like, I'm, you know as much as me. Okay, and then down here, we're looking at the Six of Cups in reverse. This middle decan of Scorpio, and it's right underneath that Ten of Swords. It's interesting that it's called pleasure in this deck, because I'm connecting with like very erotic imagery as I'm kind of connecting with it. But more in the sense of like harnessing the energy, because if you're looking at these cups and you're kind of seeing how they're all connected to these weird little like tubes or wires, and they're like sealed vessels. They're not leaking or pouring their water out anywhere. You know, whatever it is that they're containing, it's being channeled through whatever these tubes are, these vessels. And there's also like almost phallic shapes. You know, I mean, it's Aleister Crowley. Come on. You know, there's a lot of the way that it's being described to me is like thinking about the Matrix. You know how they're all connected to these machines, and you know their brain activity, their physiological activity is like being transformed into a workable energy. Maybe you're kind of dabbling again, because I mean we were talking about witchcraft earlier, connecting to the divine. Maybe you're dabbling with like tantra and like trying to work with the energies that are inherent in the physical organism, you know, and like moving it around and channeling it and allowing it to connect with, you know, the subtle realities, and trying to harness it within your own body, maybe through sexual exchanges. It's interesting. I'm looking at the Queen of Discs in reverse as I'm saying that, because, you know, the Queen of Earth, like this is somebody who's in tune with their body, somebody who's in tune with the physical reality and all the sensations that kind of arise from it. You know, there's a mastery, like I always connect with like Dune metaphors, but like the Bene Gesserits, the Prana Bindu, how they can control individual muscles and cells in their body because they've kind of like mastered that level of bodily awareness to the extent where they're able to, you know, micro movements, like they can feel every single like on a molecular scale movement within their body and control it. Like this is the Queen of Discs, absolutely. And it's connecting with the Six of Cups, this kind of erotic exploration, or rather this erotic recharging. Maybe this is kind of representing the process of connecting to a source of energy, because you are an infinite source of energy within yourself. Like you're connected to source, your source embodied in the physical form. And so, you know, that kind of sexual, orgasmic, I'm hearing undulation, that experience is kind of like tapping into that source. And it's like the most immediate physical experience of what source energy is. You know, and it's very powerful. And I'm seeing like by connecting with that somehow, whether through dance or through the act itself, through prayer, however it is that you connect with this energy, it sort of precipitates down through your body, through your mind. And if it's connecting with the hacker, it's interesting. I'm seeing like the person like sitting at a keyboard, and I'm seeing like because I said precipitates through, I'm seeing like water pouring out of the fingertips. And it's like the water is putting in the right keys to put, you know, break through this firewall, whatever it is. Those very strange images that have been coming through. But hopefully that makes sense. Then we have the Lovers here, and it's kind of in this corner where this Queen of Discs, the Six of Cups is, you know, this little quadrant of the reading where I'm talking about connecting with this erotic exchange. So maybe you're like actually physically interacting with somebody on this level. It doesn't have to necessarily be that. It can more so be that you're connecting with yourself in this way, and exploring yourself and exploring how the energy moves through you in the act of prayer, in the sexual act, in the act of working ritual or magic. Yeah, and I'm also seeing like the image of somebody, like, this is kind of odd, but somebody is like in a vein, like a blood vessel, and they're like using a broom and sweeping away the plaque, the dust bunnies. Like, there were obstacles in the way that were impinging or impeding the proper flow of energy, and whatever this corner of the reading is talking about is like the process of clearing away those obstacles. Maybe clearing away this firewall, whatever it is. Being able to feel again is maybe something that this Empress was talking about. Maybe that rounded rectangular prism was like the experience of being in a body again, and being able to connect with what that means and how wonderful it feels, how soft and squishy and marshmallow-like it is. You know, and it's a pure experience. It's not harsh, but maybe there's been a lot of barriers in place in order to get to that point. But it's clearing away the dust bunnies. This is so interesting. Maybe one of the things that the hexagram is also talking about, because, you know, we were talking about the Kong, or like the idea of like self-punishment. I wonder if maybe part of the message here is to not get caught up in that, and to not beating yourself up over connecting with what this truth or this reality or this experience is. Because if it is something of, you know, a more erotic nature, you know, there's a tendency to have a lot of shame and guilt attached to it. So maybe whatever this process is represents you working through that. It's just energy. You know, and your body is energy encapsulated, and what you do is through will inciting movement in that energy. Okay, well, this reading has gone on very long, so I'm going to end it here. I'm going to wish you all the best. I hope that this reading offers you something useful, clear, effective, but ultimately I trust that whatever decisions you make, whatever judgments you come to, you know, are appropriate for your own circumstances. I'm just here to help you work through them as a tarot reader, I think. Because that's all the tarot is a mirror held up to you, and a way for you to understand yourself and your current situation by actually seeing what's happening without your biases in the way. But, you know, through the filter of your biases too. You know, that's all life is. Anyway, rabbit holes, won't get into that. Just gonna wish you the best, Aquarius. Take care of yourselves, alright?